You know, while we wait, why don't we sing a song? Oseh shalom bimromav leinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru imru amen. Oseh Hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru imru amen. Hey, yaseh shalom shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. 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 Ladies and gentlemen, give a warm welcome to Israel's ambassador to the UN, Ambassador Gilad Erdan. I assure you, when he enters into the UN, he doesn't get this kind of a reception. So let's give him a warm reception. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and first of all, thank you all for attending tonight. Israel's first ambassador to the UN, Abba Eban, once said that if Algeria introduced a resolution in the UN saying that the world is flat and Israel flattened the world, it would pass 164 to 13 with 26 abstentions. Unfortunately, not much has changed in the UN. I just got the list of all the resolutions of condemnations of countries for the year 2023 in the UN as they finished the year. North Korea received 1 condemnation. Venezuela received 0. Myanmar got 1. Lebanon got 0. Pakistan, there was not 1 condemnation against them by the UN General Assembly. Pakistan got 0. Hamas got 0. Turkey got 0. Russia got 2. China got 0. Qatar got 0, Saudi Arabia got 0, Syria got 1, Iraq got 0, Iran got 1, and the US got 1. That's a total of 7 countries that resolutions were passed against them. But Israel received 14 condemnations in the UN in 2023. This week's Torah portion is the story of Judah standing up to the viceroy of Egypt to defend his baby brother Benjamin, saying to the viceroy, "You cannot take my brother. I will stand here and defend and protect him." And we are collectively called Jews after the tribe of Yehudah, Yehudim, because the trademark, the sign of a Jew, is someone who is willing to stand up to defend his fellow Jews. Kol Yisrael arevim zelazeh. We are all responsible for one another. And since the horrific attacks of October 7th, we have seen Jews all over the world, like Judah in this week's Torah portion, take a strong stand, facing down powerful enemies, to declare we will stand up as one people to defend our brothers and sisters in Israel. And in a sense, every one of us is an ambassador of Israel. But there's only one official ambassador to the UN. And we are honored to have with us Ambassador Gilad Erdan, who each and every day literally walks into the lion's den of enemies of Israel. And he is one voice against so many. But his voice is loud, unequivocal, and strong. And we have been watching you. And we are proud that you are our ambassador and our representative. I just want to share a story I just saw. This past Friday, there was a reservist. He had been away from his family for a month. He was coming home for Shabbat in his army uniform and his weapons. His wife and kids were preparing to celebrate Shabbat with their husband, father, for the first time in a month. And the wife said, before you come home, could you stop in the makolet, pick up a few things? We need some chalot, some wine for Shabbat. So coming from the army with his duffel bag and his weapons, he goes into the makolet, picks up a few things in the little supermarket, and he comes to the register, and he gets online. And the Israeli in front of him sees this reservist father coming home for Shabbat, and he tells the cashier, after he checks out, I'm going to pay for him. He's on me. The person standing behind the reservist says, wait, you just took my mitzvah. I was planning on paying for him. And the cashier said, no, you're both wrong. I wasn't going to charge him in the first place. This is the love and the unity that we see amongst the Jewish people. I pray that we remember this moment of Jewish unity and solidarity, and we never lose it. I want to thank Paul and Terry for bringing us together tonight, the Singer Foundation, for the wonderful programs that they bring to our synagogue. As you can see, the community truly appreciates it. And I'm honored to say that on February 19th, we're going to have the Palm Beach Synagogue's 30th gala anniversary dinner, and Terry, together with Ronnie Heyman, Terry Castle and Ronnie Heyman are the co-chairs of our gala, so you know it's going to be a success. I would like to call upon Terry Castle to introduce our speakers tonight.
Welcome back to our Critical Conversations series. I think we have some good highlights coming forward this season. Media, pundits, policy, and politics, and lawfare. Those are the kinds of things we'll be focusing on during this season. It's my pleasure to introduce Ambassador Erdan and his advisor, Rivka Kedron. Rivka will interview Ambassador Erdan. I've been fortunate, Paul and I have been fortunate to get to know Ambassador Erdan personally. And what he stands for is what we stand for. He has a straight moral compass. He's got a lot of courage. He's tireless in his defense and protection of Israel. And I think he's our future. What do I mean by that? Israel's going to be changing governments after we get through this phase of the war. And when that happens, there will be a new group of leaders that emerge. And it will probably be a center to center right government. And when that happens, we're going to be looking at a slate of leaders that we can't vote for, but the Israelis will decide who their best leaders are. And our ambassador has served for over 20 years in support, in service of Israel. There was a time when he was both the ambassador from Israel to the United States and the ambassador from Israel to the UN. So he's experienced, and he's not opportunistic. and he's serious, and he hasn't been involved in this crazy judicial reform nuttiness. So he's clean. He's not going to be tarnished by that administration. And I just wanted to say that we're very fond of him, and we're very, very happy that he could join us tonight. Separately, I wanted to spend 1 minute talking about my dear friend, Rivka Kedron. Rivka is not just anybody. She's formerly served in the office of the Prime Minister when Bibi was Bibi. And I first met her there when we were introduced to Bibi on one of our trips. And the reason I loved her so much is because she had this great haircut. And I had no idea where you could get a haircut like Rivka's in Jerusalem. So I stalked her for a while until she became my friend. Rivka is a Queens girl. She grew up in Queens, New York. And sometime in the 80s, her parents decided to leave with 3 children. Her father had a real job. He was an accountant with Price Waterhouse, or one of those big firms. And they moved to a hilltop in Samaria with 150 families. And they're still there, and they're healthy, and they raised children and grandchildren. And when they went there, they had another 3 children. So when I introduced Rivka to introduce and interview the ambassador, you're looking at an American who made Aliyah with her parents. Her 2 brothers are fighting in Gaza. Her brother-in-law is fighting in Samaria. And she's on the front lines, bringing people supplies, comfort, food, and hugs. So thank you for joining us, and it's my pleasure to introduce the ambassador and Rivka Kedron.
We're all aware of the important work that you're doing, and we can only imagine how busy you are these days. So we just want to thank you so much for taking the time to be with us this evening. And on a personal note, if I may, as an Israeli who has 2 brothers serving in Gaza and a nephew in Samaria, I just want to thank you for all that you're doing to defend Israel in this global arena. And yes, deserves it.
Okay, so good evening, everyone. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here tonight. First of all, I would like to thank Paul and Terry for inviting me and for all of their so many activities to support Israel and the Jewish people. And I truly thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I'm honored to be your friend. Thank you. And they deserve another round of applause. I want to thank you, Rabbi Scheiner. I want to thank your team, who was extremely professional by taking good care of me. And of course, I want to thank each and every one of you for coming here tonight to listen to me and also express your support and solidarity for the state of Israel. So thank you. I was introduced, I had the honor to be introduced by Terry, by Rivka, so I'll try quickly to say a few things about my personal story. I was born in Ashkelon. I grew up in an Orthodox family. I graduated from yeshiva, a boarding school, Netiv Meir, in Jerusalem. After I was released from the military, I studied in Bar Ilan University in its law school. And it was during the time when the Oslo Accords were signed in 1993. Quickly, I became a student leader, and I led the protests against these accords. I thought it was a terrible mistake to import the murderer Arafat and his gang, and that's how I got to know, at the time, member of Knesset Ariel Sharon, who made me his political advisor. And I have to tell you something personal. Since I grew up in Ashkelon, in the periphery, I was never involved in politics, even though since I was very young, I was always involved in school. I was the MC. I was telling everyone how they should do things differently, what they should improve. My mom always told me, like Terry, that one day you should be the prime minister. You want to tell everyone what to do. I'm not saying that I want to be the prime minister. I don't want to destroy. I'm a diplomat.
Headline
I'm a
here.
diplomat. I can't say anything political. But the story is that I was approached by the Mossad. And when I graduated from law school and I had to start my internship in a law firm, so I was approached by the Mossad. I did all of their exams. I was supposed to be like intelligence officer, but exactly that time it was when Prime Minister Rabin was assassinated, and I get a phone call from Ariel Sharon, and he offered me to become his political advisor. And then I had a huge dilemma. I mean, a law firm, okay, I can always do my internship. Working for someone like Ariel Sharon, who was like the deputy of God for me, a national hero, but working for the Mossad. But then I looked in the mirror and I told myself, well, Gilad, you're not this kind of a person who's willing to give up getting the credit and working behind the scene. It was supposed to be funny. Okay, laugh. So I decided to try and work with Ariel Sharon because I felt privileged even to volunteer for him. And also, since I grew up in a family where 3 out of my 4 grandparents survived Auschwitz, I always felt the need to fight for the future of the Jewish people. No one thought Netanyahu would win the election. I'm talking about 27 years ago, 1996, and I volunteered for Ariel Sharon. But as you say, men make plans and God laughs, and Netanyahu won, and I got to know him. He offered me to become his advisor, and as you described, back in 2003, I decided to develop my own political career. I was elected to the Knesset, and after 17 years of serving in the parliament, in 2020, when we had this political stalemate, you remember 3, 4, 5 rounds of consecutive elections, and Netanyahu and Gantz, when they established their unity government, I was offered to be appointed as Israel's ambassador to the United States and the United Nations simultaneously. And then I remembered how when I studied in Netiv Meir Yeshiva, at President Herzog at the time, who served also as our ambassador to the UN, he came to visit us, and he told us as students how you remember, he tore up the UN resolution that claimed that Zionism equals racism. And it lit up a fire inside of me, and I always had this dream that if I'm offered one day to fight for Israel on the world stage, I will go for it. And now I'm here with you.
I don't know about the rest of you, but you had me at Mossad agent. Everything after that is a little bit of a blur.
So superficial. So superficial.
Can I tell you? Okay, let's turn to the topic of this evening, the UN, which had a very meaningful role in the establishment of the State of Israel by passing Resolution 181, the Partition Plan, in November 1947. However, since then, the United Nations has been extremely anti-Israel. How does the irony of this influence Israel's engagement at the United Nations?
So I think in order to answer your question, how did the UN deteriorated from voting in favor of the partition plan, literally establishing a Jewish state, to the situation that we see right now, that it has been weaponized against Israel? We have to understand the strategy of our enemies and why they picked the UN as their almost main arena to attack and delegitimize Israel. And the reason is that for many years, and you remember, I assume many of you remember that, we had so many wars, and after the UN passed the partition plan supporting the establishment of a Jewish state, so the Arab countries, they were shocked. It was 2 years after the end of the Holocaust, the atmosphere towards the Jewish people and the Israelis was totally different, and they thought they can compensate for that resolution by destroying the state of Israel. So 5 Arab countries attacked us. They tried to annihilate the newly born Jewish state, but they failed. They failed in 1948. They failed later in the Six-Day War. They failed in the Yom Kippur War. They failed time and again. And they realized that they cannot defeat, thank God, they cannot defeat the IDF on the conventional battlefield. So they came with a new strategy. And what is the new strategy? The new strategy is a combination of attacking not the military, attacking our citizen, attacking our home front. They do it with terror tunnels, they do it with missile and rockets. They want to drive us away from our country out of fear. They want families in Israel to feel that Israel is not a safe place to raise our kids. And how they complement this strategy is by exploiting the UN, because the UN today, when the UN started and when the UN voted upon the partition plan, there were only 57 member states. Today, there are 193 member states. I will explain in a while about the makeup of the UN. But what they're trying to do is, after they attack our citizens and terrorize them, they try to tie our hands by preventing us from our right for self-defense. And how do you do it? You do it by exploiting the UN, by weaponizing the UN to delegitimize Israel, to pass resolutions that calls for a ceasefire or condemning Israel for the implementation of our right for self-defense. And why is it so possible to exploit and weaponize the UN? Because out of these 193 countries, almost, you remember, in 1947, some of the member states, the 57 member states, were truly the biggest occupiers, the true occupiers: UK, France, Spain, Portugal. Since then, they allowed their colonies to get their liberties, and now you have almost 1/3, 56 countries that are Muslim countries. Almost 1/3 of the UN are Muslim countries. You don't know it, but majority of member states in the UN, more than half of 193 member states, are non-democratic. And as you remember, in the General Assembly, every country is equal. The vote of the United States equals the vote of Cuba or Venezuela or some islands that I learned their names only after I came here, St. Vincent and the Grenadine, or St. Kitts and the Nevis. They have less people than Palm Beach, but they still can vote in the General Assembly. And the people around the world, when they hear, oh, there was a UN condemnation against Israel, well, there was a UN resolution calling for a ceasefire. Why Israel does not abide by the UN's decision? So that's the reason why you hear much more about the UN and how it, as you asked me, Rivka, how it was deteriorated against Israel.
As ambassador, prior to October 7th, you registered many impressive achievements, such as passing the historic resolution on Holocaust denial, electing Israel to the prestigious UN Economic and Social Council, and you were even elected as the vice president of the General Assembly. Can you tell us—
It's the same salary.
No bonuses, no trips to the islands, no. Can you tell us, what is it like defending Israel in this global arena, and how do you fight against the bias and win?
So since I I understand the unique situation and, as I explained, the institutionalized bias that Israel has been facing at the UN, because when you have 1/3 of the UN that votes automatically against Israel when we are in the midst of a conflict against any other Arab or Muslim entity. So first of all, it's always important to remember what the Lubavitcher Rebbe said about the UN. He called it the house of lies, but he said another important thing that we probably mentioned during Hanukkah, that he said that in the UN and elsewhere, even a little bit of light, when the room is very dark, even a little bit of light can dispel much darkness. So every day when I come to the UN, I remember it. And I don't care if I'm the only one in the room. I will fight for the truth. I will expose the hypocrisy, the lies, the double standards that they apply against Israel. And I believe that it makes an impact, and it can change the point of view of many countries. And if you ask me, how do I do it? I think that it's quite clear that, in the military we say that everything we do is divided to 3 components. But I will simplify it. At the UN, I divide my strategy to 2 separate tactics. The first one is, since I know that taking, considering our circumstances, a democracy surrounded, with enemies, I believe that Israel and our military is one of the most moral countries in the world, if not the most moral country. So my first tactic is never to bow my head, always going on the offensive to expose the lies and hypocrisy of our enemies. And I do it by many creative ways. I can give examples. If I know that the president of Iran, Raisi, is coming to speak at the UN, and I see, and it's unbelievable, unfathomable, that he gets the red carpet treatment, even though, as I said, the UN was established to prevent atrocities. This is a guy who's responsible for murdering not only innocent civilians all across the globe, because Iran is the #1 state sponsor of terrorism, but he's murdering his own people. He's murdering women who did not wear their hijab properly, or murdering innocent, peaceful protesters. And I see him getting the red carpet treatment in the UN. So I decided to protest in front of him during his speech. And I don't know if you saw it, but I held up a sign with the picture of Mahsa Amini, the woman that was murdered by his regime. And I think it was extremely important that the whole world could see that the only ambassador that was standing in solidarity with the women of Iran was the ambassador of the one and only Jewish state. So this is what I call going on the offensive. So, and the other tactic is that the world, as we say, managers, they say that in every challenge you can also find an opportunity. So there is an opportunity at the UN, because it's a round table of the whole world, 193 countries. And as you all know, Israel provides the world with some of the most advanced technologies that can tackle, that can provide solutions exactly to the problems that the UN is trying to address: climate change, water scarcity, food insecurity, cyber defense. So I initiate many events, and I invite Israeli, quite similar to what you do in Startup Nation Central, but I do it inside the UN. I invite Israeli companies, I expose them to new markets, to new countries. And when I do that, so many countries understand that they have a lot to gain by, okay, maybe the first step is not to vote in favor of Israel because they might be punished by the Muslim group, but I can convince them not to vote against us, but to stay outside of the room, to break away from their regional or religious group. I did it, for example, when I hosted an event with 25 African countries, ambassadors, and I showed them how many villages Israel has been connecting to running water, to renewable energy, literally giving them life. And later you could see that these African countries changed their voting patterns. So I think that by working and implementing these two tactics, going on the offensive to expose the lies and hypocrisy, and showcasing our technological advancements, innovation, creativity, you can make a difference. And again, I'm hopeful for the future.
Thank you. I think since October 7th, we could all do with some more light. So thank you for bringing that light. Can you share with us, how have things been different since Hamas's massacre attack on October 7th? And what does Israel gain by engaging with a forum so biased against it?
Well, it's a very good question, because I'm being asked many times, and I ask myself sometimes when I wake up in the morning and I see another anti-Israeli initiative, what are we doing there? Why do we need to be members in this terrible, terrible organization? But I think it's important to understand, first of all, the facts. No country in the world ever gave up its membership at the UN. I mean, even North Korea, they stayed as members at the UN because, as I described, it provides you with many opportunities to strengthen your economy, to try and, persuade foreign investors to invest in Israel. But it's not only about the positive opportunities. I'm not naive. I don't think that I'll be able to change the voting patterns of the most of the Arab countries. I don't think I'll be able to change the voting patterns of Cuba or other allies of Iran. But I do believe that it is my role to preserve our legitimacy in the civilized world. Therefore, when they are there, and if I'm not there, so who's going to fight for Israel? Who's going to come or invite? You had here the son of Hamas, my friend Mas'ab Hassan Yusuf. So immediately when the war after October 7th happened, I remember him, and we know him very well in Israel. So I thought maybe one of the best things to do is to invite him and to make the ambassadors listen to him, because sometimes the way this conflict is being branded as if it's part of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. We know it's not. We know that we are fighting an organization similar to ISIS, yes, similar to the Nazis, an organization that is committed only to the annihilation of Israel, but the ambassadors at the UN, they don't know it. So if you invite someone like the Prince of Hamas, who grew up as part of them and he knows their true nature, and he shared with them his experience, so you can make a difference. You can still preserve the legitimacy that you need from the UK, from France, from Germany, from many other Western or Western countries or the free world countries, that you need them for the future. And if I'm not there, if Israel is not a member of the UN, they might succeed, and that's what they want, as I explained, to delegitimize the whole notion of the existence of a Jewish state. They want to brand us as the biggest human rights abusers. They want to brand us, portray us as the murderers of children. And I can give another example. I just hosted a very important event that I felt that made, like you could feel that it had a positive impact, because for 60 days, the UN Women, the UN organization that is supposed to defend women all around the world, they kept silent in regards to the rapes and the sex crimes that were committed by Hamas against Israeli women on October 7th. So I hosted a very big event. I invited Sheryl Sandberg. I got a video from Hillary Clinton and many other leaders. And I felt that it made an impact again, we're talking about preserving the legitimacy for our goal to eliminate Hamas's terror capabilities and bringing back our hostages. And in order to preserve and maintain this legitimacy, we need the support of our allies. And if we are not there, it will not happen by itself. So I think it's important.
Yes. I think we're all glad that you are there doing this important work. Thank you. I want to talk a minute about the UN agencies. Many of them, like UNRWA and the World Health Organization, have been facing criticism for allegedly collaborating with Hamas in Gaza. Can you tell us what tools does Israel have to influence these agencies, and what changes would you like to see?
Yeah, I can tell you. So I feel that, as I explained, it won't be a good decision to leave and give up our membership at the UN. But for sure, we must ask ourselves what to do different that will influence the UN's approach towards Israel in the future. Because it's not possible to continue that way, that we are the only liberal democracy in the Middle East. And as was mentioned by Rabbi Scheiner, and I can give you the exact numbers, not only the numbers of 2023, Israel represents 0.1% of the world population, and we receive, in average, 70% of the UN's condemnation. 70%, as you pointed out, more than Iran, Syria, Russia, and North Korea combined. So it's terrible. We cannot continue and accept this distorted, crazy reality. Right now, we're in the midst of a war, and we have to preserve the support and legitimacy of our allies. I don't think we can do right now fundamental changes, because, for example, some UN agencies, even though, again, they're doing terrible job like UNRWA or UNICEF, but right now there are no other organizations in Gaza that the international community can work with. But for sure, one day after the war, God willing, will end, we will have to remind the world what happened there. We will have to remind the world that since Israel withdrew unilaterally from Gaza 18 years ago, it was only the UN agencies that were operating in Gaza. It was under the UN's nose, under UNRWA nose, that the Hamas dug all these huge terror tunnels under the UNRWA schools. It was inside the UNRWA school where they teach children, indoctrinated them to hate Jews, to murder Jews, to train them in summer camps, how to use grenades, how to use assault rifles. Everything happened under the UN nose. So, of course, we cannot accept this reality to continue. And I think we have a leverage, and people should know it, that all these UN's officials, all the UN employees that are operating and working in the Palestinian Authority, they receive visas from Israel. So first and foremost, I think we should cancel their visas. We should expel them. We should expel these These UN employees who are exploiting their presence in Israel to report and spread lies and distort the truth and the reality, they shouldn't stay in Israel. And there's another thing we must do. And I think, again, I'm not going to get myself involved in American politics, but I can talk about facts. During President Trump, they made the right decision to defund UNRWA. And again, I called for defunding the UN because right now your taxes, the American taxpayers, are the one funding the distortions of the UN. Your taxes are funding, Russia and China controlling the Security Council. That's the reality these days. So I think it should be our formal policy to campaign for defunding each and every UN agency that doesn't advance the values that we all share as democracies.
Okay, I'd like to take a second to speak about the Abraham Accords. So obviously the war in Gaza has put a pause on the expansion of the Abraham Accords and has even led to some tension with countries that have normalized ties. Are you still optimistic about Israel's future in the broader Arab world? And what are you hearing from your Arab colleagues at the United Nations?
I think it's a very important question regarding the future of our region, and maybe I will surprise you. I am very optimistic regarding the future, not only of the Abraham Accords, but also towards the expansion of the Abraham Accords, including Saudi Arabia. And I'll explain why. First of all, we all heard that even President Biden, and he mentioned it several times, he understands that the attack on October 7th was also connected to the fact that Iran, which is, we all know, is the puppet master of Hamas, they realized how close we were to normalizing relations with Saudi Arabia. They realized it's going to create, to make a distinction between the two camps in the Middle East, the radical camp that is being led by Iran with its terrorist proxies, and the moderate Sunnis, Arab countries together with Israel. So part of the reasons why they decided to attack and that the timing that they picked was also to prevent, to stop, and to sabotage the normalization with Saudi Arabia. Now, if you look or listen to the announcement and the statements that are being made by the leaders of the Arab countries who normalized relations with Israel, like Mohammed bin Zayed, the leader of the United Arab Emirates, or even Mohammed bin Salman, the leader of Saudi Arabia, you don't hear them saying, okay, it's over, Israel is killing babies and children in Gaza, we will never make peace with Israel. On the contrary, some of them, like the UAE, have condemned Hamas. Many of them, they know that Hamas, which you should know, Hamas is a branch of the Muslim Brotherhood. Many of the Sunni countries are being threatened by the Muslim Brotherhood. President al-Sisi of Egypt, but also other Sunni countries. So, and I'll tell you a secret here. When I speak with them in the corridors of the UN, privately they speak different. They tell me different things. They tell me that they understand us. They tell me that they know how, they know the savagery and the brutality of Hamas. Yes, they play their internal political games, because many of them are not real democracies. They don't know their real political situation, so they are concerned from having internal uprising. So they play the political game. They make these statements calling for a ceasefire. But the truth is that they know who we are fighting against, and therefore I'm optimistic that once we destroy Hamas, it will not only teach a very important lesson and will restore our deterrence in the region. That is something that we must do to teach Hezbollah and other terrorists a real lesson that an attack like October 7th cannot happen again, but it will also help us to accelerate the future agreements with other Abraham Accords countries. And I believe once we'll have normalization with Saudi Arabia, which enjoys the unique status of Islam, the protector of Islam, holiest sites, it will definitely, God willing, create a domino effect that will make many other Arab countries follow suit. So yes, I am optimistic.
Good.
And I'm not naive.
Okay, that leads me to my final question. Over the past few months, Israel has seen tremendous support from the Biden administration. But the sentiment on the ground, particularly from young Democrats, minority groups, and progressive, has been very different from the administration's. What do you think Israel's relationship with the U.S. will look like moving forward? And what can be done to strengthen the ties?
That's a very sensitive question, so I'll be cautious. First, I will say that we are grateful to the Biden's administration for the support that we receive on many different levels, but I feel it every day at the UN because I'm working closely with Ambassador Thomas Greenfield, and they already vetoed several anti-Israel resolution. And even though, and again, I'll be honest, it's not that we agree on everything. We have some fundamental disagreements with the administration when it comes to their policies to block Iran from becoming a nuclear power, and many other important topics that we don't see eye to eye. But still, the U.S. is the only reliable partner in the UN that we can rely on. And as I said, we are grateful for their support. Nevertheless, we have to look for the future. We have to see where we are going to face some difficulties. And clearly, when we see thousands of Americans marching in support of Hamas, a designated terrorist organization here in the United States that calls loud and clear in its charter for the annihilation of the Jewish people and the state of Israel, it should frighten every American to see what's happening on college campuses, to see the ignorance of young people here who are supporting murderers, baby killers, supporting people, murderers who burned families alive, chanting death to Israel and the Jews, one of your closest allies. So we have to be concerned. But I still feel that these days, even when we are surrounded by a sea of darkness, there is still hope, because as I see here that the room is packed, I feel a sense of unity among the Jewish people that I never felt before. And I believe you deserve it, because I know that since October 7th, and after we've seen what happened in Israel, and after we've seen the horrifying surge in anti-Semitism here, we realized they do not differentiate between Orthodox Jews or Reform Jews or conservative Jews or Ashkenazim or Mizrahim, right-wing, left-wing. Those who hate us, they want to kill all of us. Therefore, we have to work together. And when I look at the future of the special alliance that we have with the United States of America, so I believe it's very easy to identify where we should spend our efforts. I don't want to elaborate too much, but obviously when we live today in the internet era and Allah can travel the world before the troop even can put its shoes on, so we have to understand that the young generation who consume their news, and that's where they get all of their information, we have to allocate many more budgets in spreading and distributing our messages. Obviously, when there are 1.6 billion Muslims all across the globe and there are only 7 million Jews outside of Israel, we have to bridge this gap, and we have to invest in connecting ourselves to the young generation. And I believe, in addition, we have to identify the right communities that we did not approach and connected ourselves enough. A very clear example are the African Americans. It's not, I don't feel it's a coincidence when you hear anti-Semitic statements being made by, I don't know, Kyrie Irving or Dave Chappelle or Whoopi Goldberg or Kanye West. It's easy for our enemies to try and connect themselves to the African Americans, to lie to them as if they share the same stories of people who were oppressed by white colonialists that are not the indigenous to the land and came and oppressed and enslaved them and prevented them from their civil rights. And we know that today, if we look at the American society, and 40% of America today are minorities, so we have the Latino communities, we have the black communities, you have the Asian Americans, but clearly I believe that today one of the most important goals, and again it was Israel's mistake first and foremost, we have to connect ourselves better and closer to the African American communities. We have to invest in taking their leaders and influencers. That's what I do with the help of the Singer Foundation, to take ambassadors from the UN who never visited Israel, because once you visit Israel and you are exposed not only to the thousands of years history in Jerusalem and elsewhere, you meet the people, you look in their eyes, you see the diversity, you meet Muslims, you meet Israelis of Ethiopian descent, you understand our security challenges, you see how tiny Israel is, so you understand the reality, and then it can change your whole perspective about our region. So when I look at our future, I think we should prioritize the United States of America, and inside the United States of America, for sure, the young generation and African Americans. And I will continue to work closely with you and with the foundation to expand our relation with them. Okay, so I think the benchmarks are quite clear. It's not only to degrade and destroy their terrorist capabilities. You will see it when they will stop launching missiles and rockets. But I think even more importantly is that to remove them from power. They won't be able to make the decisions in Gaza. And you will see, when it happens, you will know it, because you'll see a collapse. You will see many of them escaping the Gaza Strip. And hopefully, I hope it will take few more weeks, but not more than 4 to 8 weeks.
Hi there, welcome.
What's your name?
Limor.
Limor.
Yes.
What a beautiful American name.
Yes.
Yes.
So what's your vision of what Gaza will look like, and who will occupy it, and what will happen once we've eradicated Hamas? Because we will.
Well, that's a very complicated question, because this is exactly, I served in the security cabinet of Israel for 8 years. And for many years, we unilaterally withdrew from the Gaza Strip 18 years ago. And right after we withdrew, they started to use every square inch that we evacuated as a new launching pad to indiscriminately fire missile and rockets. And we always had this dilemma, what do you do? Maybe if we enter Gaza, and we all know no Israeli mom wants her son to enter Gaza. We know that it's going to cost with a very painful cost. And there was always this question that you just asked me, but what will be the alternative? Who knows what will happen? Who will replace Hamas? Maybe the organization that would control Gaza would be worse than Hamas. So we made a mistake. So we delayed this very hard decision, and we delayed, and then we got the attack on October 7th. And I think we should remember the our Jewish heritage that tells us, it's a very famous, it's a passage, Sur mera ve'aseh tov. First, you see something bad, fight it, okay? Then think how to make good things. So right now, I don't have a clear answer to give you. First of all, we have to get rid of Hamas. We have to eradicate Hamas. That's our first goal. The Prime Minister has set few principles for the future of the Gaza Strip. And some of them were accepted by President Biden, because it's quite clear that you cannot allow the Palestinian Authority with their current standards, when they support and pay terrorists, when they did not even condemn October 7th to rule the Gaza Strip, because then you'll get the same results. They will still indoctrinate kids to hate Israel, to dream of wiping Israel off the map. So right now we are very focused on eliminating Hamas. Simultaneously, we are holding thorough discussions with the international community, but I think it will take some time to come with a solution. Thank you. It's his office. It's his office. But the notion wasn't to harass this phone number. By the way, since then I lost the ability to use my phone, because I am harassed by thousands of Indonesians who are calling my cell phone and texting me like thousands of texts every day. But it's a small price to pay. The message was clear. If you want a ceasefire, call Sinwar, ask him to turn himself in, ask the leaders of Hamas to turn themselves in and release the hostages, and then you'll get a real ceasefire that can last forever.
I'm Terry Kafka from Dallas, Texas, and Palm Beach. Welcome. The question I have is, since some of the hostages, I believe there are 8 American hostages, do you think we will ever see U.S. Special Forces and the IDF working together to extract these hostages?
Well, it's enough for me to represent Israel at the UN. I'm not as privileged to represent the United States. If I listen to your president, so he made it clear that he doesn't want to see boots on the ground, but still he did send the 2 aircraft carriers to deter Iran and Hezbollah from expanding the war to our northern border. And I think, again, he deserves a big credit. And we are grateful for this. It was a very important decision.
Michael Scharf. Mr. Ambassador, something has always puzzled me, and maybe you could clarify it. We keep talking about October 7th and the number of people who were killed, number of Israelis who were killed, which was, I don't recall the exact number, but it was 1,600 people.
A little bit less than 1,400.
Okay. But don't you think...
But since then, we lost also many soldiers.
Right.
And again, always remember that if you compare it to the size and the population of the United States, it's 20 times bigger, 20 times more than 9/11. That's my
question.
Yeah.
In every statement about the number of Israelis killed, there should be a following phrase: compared to, if this happened in the United States, it would be 40,000 killed. If it happened in China, it would be 140,000 killed. That makes it much more, adds much more gravity to the whole thing as opposed to 1,500 people. I just wonder why that hasn't become part of the parlance of Israeli spokespersons.
You're right. We used it many times during the days after the attack. But you're right. We have to use it again. Lately, we are being criticized because they are always applying different double standards when it comes to Israel, and they also take at face value the numbers that Hamas is providing the international community, which is so crazy. That's another failure of the UN, because the UN never established a verification mechanism in Gaza. So they need to rely, listen how crazy it is, they rely on the faked Ministry of Health of Gaza, which we know everything in Gaza is being controlled 100% by Hamas. So a designated terrorist organization with a phone number that I can give, you can call them, is providing the world and the UN with the numbers of people who were killed or injured. If you take their numbers, we are killing only babies and women. We didn't kill any terrorist until that day. So yes, that's the reality that we are facing, and you're right. You're invited to join my team as well. Seriously, no.
Mr. Ambassador.
Where?
Back here. Back here.
Ah.
Yeah. Mr. Ambassador, let me begin by saying I'm an admirer. I've watched you on TV. I watched you when you put the Star of David on yourself at the General Assembly.
Thank you.
And I have let me say I'm Greek. I'm Greek Orthodox, but I'm 37.5% Jewish, and I'm very proud of it. I have a comment and a question. The comment is that I'm probably one of very few people that spent 2 whole days with Mahmoud Abbas about 10 years ago within the context of an NGO, a forum of which I was one of 3 co-founders, and we invited him to speak to us on the island of Rhodes in Greece, which, by the way, is the first place ever where the boundaries of Israel were set in 1948 and 49. And I'm proud of that, too, that they were set. Those boundaries were set in Greek, on Greek soil. Now, my comment about Mahmoud Abbas is that he was speaking to our General Assembly. Try to imagine 600 people there, VIPs, some heads of state, top religious leaders, etc. And so I observed him for 2 days. He would say one thing when he was making a speech to the plenary session, a flowery speech about the future of peace, and then when we would retire to the private rooms, it was all about how Israel has no right to exist. So I got a first-hand dose of the hypocrisy of those people. And now my question, Mr. Ambassador, I am dying to hear you say one day at the General Assembly when the representative from Yemen or one of those countries gets up, I'm dying to hear you ask them, excuse me, why are you even here? You trample on all the charters, the UN Charter, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the International Treaty for Women, which was a precondition of your accession as a member of the UN. You trampled on those treaties. Why, sir, are you even here today? I'm just dying to hear you ask that.
I don't feel that you expect an answer, so I will leave the crowd with your emotional statements. But I agree with you. I mean, the UN is so distorted that Iran can be elected to lead the social forum of the Human Rights Council. Should I say anything other than that? But you're paying for it. You're the biggest funders of the UN, by the way, all of you. Yeah, we have time only for 2 more questions. I'm ready to come again if the foundation invites me. I can read the Haftorah here.
I have a question about Hatufim in Gaza. There's still about 100.
I was a Baal Koreh, you should know. I taught kids for their bar mitzvah. Terry didn't mention it. She just got me into politics.
There are about 130, still 130 Hatufim or kidnapped people in Gaza. And Israel committed to get them out. And my question is, how do you deal with somebody that you vote to kill? So Israel said we're going to kill Yihya Sinwar,
Yes.
Machshimo, and the others. I know that Henia, who just visited Egypt yesterday, President Herzog just said that Israel is willing to listen and willing to trade maybe 40 kidnapped
Hostages.
1 to 3.
Yeah.
Anyway, so how does Israel deal? How they're making iska with somebody that they are going to?
I think that everyone here understands that we are facing a challenge that no democracy, I don't remember any country that was faced with such a challenge, that on the one hand, for the future of your country, you have to eradicate this terrorist organization. On the other hand, they hold hostages, the biggest number I ever, even, in Hollywood, they couldn't come with such a script. But sadly, we understand, based on our experience with Hamas, that if they are not attacked constantly, if they are not threatened, as their existence is not threatened, we don't have a chance to release the hostages. We don't have a chance for a deal, because otherwise they know they play with our emotions. They try to divide our people, to incite the families against the government. So we believe that what we're doing right now is the only path that can work, by constantly attacking them. And what we see now, that they are trying to motivate other Arab countries to call for a ceasefire, it means that our path is the right path, because that's what has been pressuring them also to negotiate a hostages deal. And that's the only path that can help us release as many as possible, hopefully all of them.
We have one last question, and then we're going to try the video one last time. If we can't get it, we're going to email it to you. We have all your emails.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you for your time. The last question, sort of piggybacking off that one, is Qatar has an interesting role in all of this as negotiator, mediator, safe haven for terrorists. Given the convoluted nature of Qatar and other semi-allies of Israel, say Saudi Arabia behind the scenes, publicly Israel has said they plan to deal with all members of Hamas, every country, you can't run, you can't hide. How is Israel planning to deal with nations like Qatar, given their convoluted role in this conflict?
When you say convoluted, so you expect me to simplify it from the stage. So it's a contradiction, because if something is convoluted, we want it to stay like that. But I can hint and say that, like what I said about the UN's agencies and about what Israel should do one day after the war, when it comes to Qatar, again, the fact that you have such a big military base in Qatar and how it influences your administration, the fact that Qatar established an anti-Semitic, anti-Israeli TV channel that educates so many kids in the Middle East to hate Israel, the fact that Hamas allows the leaders of Qatar allows the leader of Hamas to live there, the fact that Hamas is that Qatar, you see, I'm confused. Qatar is the biggest funder of Hamas. It all needs to be remembered. And one day after, we will remember and we will act, and hopefully we'll do it together with you here at American Jews, because we need to change also the administration policy in regards to Qatar. But right now it's more sensitive, and we all understand it. Thank you.
Round of applause for the ambassador and for Rivka. Thank you very much. One last announcement. The next installment of Critical Conversation series will be on January 31st. We're going to have Dan Senor, the author of Startup Nation, who just wrote a new book called The Genius of Israel, together with Noah Tishby. So mark your calendars.
Thank you.